Okay, let's call this meeting to order with the Tile Truckee Sanitation Agency for May 15, 2019 at 9 a.m. Let the record reflect the full board is here and present. Director Cox, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time we have public comment. Any person wishing to address the board may do so at this time. Hearing no public comment, we'll close the public comment session and go right into professional achievements and awards.
Good morning, President Lewis and Directors. Vicky Lufrano, HR Administrator for the record. Just wanted to acknowledge a couple of individuals for their professional achievements and anniversaries. And if I could please just have you stand when I call your names so the board knows who you are. First one is Ryan Schultz. Ryan, good morning. He received Electrical Instrumentation Grade 3 certification and was thereby promoted to IME Technician 2. Great job, Ryan. Next one, Zeb Snyder, who is not here today, received Mechanical Technologist Grade 3 certification and was thereby promoted to Mechanic 3. Great job, Zeb. And Billy Martin. Hi, Billy. Good morning. Please. Good morning. Billy received his Wastewater Treatment Plant Operator Grade 1 certification and was thereby promoted to Wastewater Treatment Plant Operator 1. Great job, Billy. And then we have 3 anniversaries today. First one is Robert Gray from the IT department with 20 years.
Wow, 20 already.
Next one is myself, Vicky Lufrano, HR Administrator with 1 year. And then Angelina Henson, Administrative Assistant with 1 year. Great job.
All righty, thank you, Vicki. I always say the strength of the agency is with the employees. Thank you for the outstanding work that you've been doing. So let's go on to consent agenda, approval of minutes on the consent calendar, and approval of general warrants, and approval of financial statements. Any directors wishing to take any one of those off and discuss them individually? Hearing none, do I have a motion for approval of the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
I'll second. Director Cox moves to approve. Director Northrup seconds it. Any further discussion on the consent calendar? Hearing none. Do we need a roll call? All approved. No, let's call for a vote.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. Motion passes. Okay, item 5.1. We're here. We have a discussion and update on the compensation and classification study.
Yes, Ms. Shelley Anderson of Bryce Consulting is here to provide an update to the Board of Directors in regards to the status of the compensation and classification study. She has a presentation and she'll go through the status update and address questions.
So good morning. So we are moving along in both the classification and compensation study. So just as a reminder in terms of what we've completed and where we are in both, with respect to the classification study, I met with all the employees to walk them through the process. We had interviews with managers, employees completed questionnaires. I did interviews with the bulk of the employees. And so I've now drafted the draft version of the job descriptions, which have been reviewed by HR as well as TTSA's attorney for kind of legal compliance issues. So those have now been released to the employees in draft, and what we've asked them to do is take a couple weeks and look at them and provide me with any additional feedback, concerns, questions they might have regarding titles, recommendations, language in the job description. So we're going to have all of those back in about a week and a half or so. And then what I will do is I will go through all of that. If I need to circle back with employees about information that they provided, I'll do so. If I need to talk with managers further, and then go through all of their comments and concerns, make whatever revisions we need to job descriptions. If we need to alter recommendations for some reason, we'll do that as appropriate. But it's kind of that last step to make sure that we have the employees fully engaged in the process and we allow them an opportunity to review the job descriptions prior to them being finalized. And we will have a lot of changes based on that, especially with respect to just kind of wording in job descriptions. We have a lot of technical classes and they're the subject matter experts, so I take all of those comments very seriously and make whatever recommendations we need to as long as it's appropriate. And then once we're done with that, that'll kind of be we'll finalize the classification portion of it. And then in terms of the compensation study, if you recall, the board approved the agencies that we would survey. We have collected all of the data from the other organizations. We've prepared draft data sheets with all of the data in terms of salary and benefits by classification. We have a couple different versions of the data sheets because we have one with the agencies that I recommended. We have one with the bigger group of agencies. If you recall, the employees provided feedback and you allowed those agencies to be included. We have one version that's for classic employees and one version that's for Pepper employees. So management is in the process of reviewing those data sheets. If we have changes from the classification study based on the employee's review that will impact that, we'll go back and correct it. But chances are the bulk of it will stay the same, so I didn't want to hold up that process while we were getting through the employee review process. But any change that we make, we'll go back and kind of update those data sheets. And so once the agency has finished reviewing it, any questions that they have, if we have to go back to any of the survey agencies, we will do so. And then we'll finalize that and prepare our recommendations. And the plan is to present the final packet or the complete packet to the board in July. Correct? I think that's correct.
Okay.
Any questions for me?
So July is the date that you're trying to get everything finalized and final report back to the board.
Correct.
And that gives, what period of time, when did you first contact the employees with started the meetings with them as far as their response?
So we provided the draft of the job descriptions to the employees last Friday.
Okay.
So they've only had a few days to review them, and we're going to give them 2 weeks because they all have jobs in addition to reviewing the job descriptions.
Correct.
So we want to give them a period of time so that we're not rushing the process.
I just want to make sure they have adequate time.
Yep.
To,
Yeah, we're
go
giving
through
them 2
everything.
weeks.
Okay.
Yep. And I would imagine if someone's on vacation or something, we can adjust for an employee who has, for some reason, they're not able to do it in that 2 weeks.
Okay.
So.
Board comment?
I have a
Go
question.
ahead, Director Wilkins.
So at some point, the board will need to make a determination as to what position in the labor market that we want to base our salaries on. When would that happen in the schedule?
We ran the data at the mean and the median, and my plan was to give you recommendations for both. And then when I present it to you in July, you guys could kind of decide it at that point. Because I ran the statistics in a couple different, so I was planning on giving you multiple scenarios and presenting it to you in July. If you want to have a conversation about that before that, then we can figure out. My problem is I will be out of the country at your next board meeting, and I think your general manager is gone as well. So we were kind of trying to figure out the best time to do that.
Right, because I think you were running the data, you were going to run it based on the original agencies that had been identified, and then the expanded group of agencies.
Correct.
So that it'll be important, at least from my perspective, to understand those two sets of data, and then at some point we need to decide if we want to benchmark at the average of the market at 75% of the market, whatever that might be. So you're saying that would be the July meeting? Correct. Okay.
Board comment?
Will we be, will we be given a graph or a sheet that shows the compensation of like agencies to ours?
Correct.
And that's that's going to be at the July meeting?
Correct. You'll have a spreadsheet for
That's
each.
what I'm...
Yes, you'll have a spreadsheet for each of the classifications we surveyed that will contain all of the data for all of the agencies that we compared. So you'll have a version that has the smaller set of agencies and then the bigger set with all of their benefit information and salary broken up into columns and the calculations for each.
Perfect.
Shelley, when you have, say, an employee, okay, once they have, there may be a difference as far as opinion on their classification. When do you set up a meeting with them? Is it face-to-face, teleconference? How do you do it?
Yeah, so I'm going to see what kind of comments I get back. So on the comments that are just, can you change this word in the job description, those types of things I'll just look at and see if we need to. Everyone who submits something to me, if they have a question or concern, will get something back to them from me in writing saying what we did. If it's something more significant where they disagree with the recommendation I've made for their classification, I'm going to talk with them, whether I talk with them over the phone or face-to-face. I kind of want to see how many employees there are that have those issues, and maybe what I'll do is just schedule a day to come up and meet with them.
Okay.
So, but there will be some communication for those employees that have bigger concerns about the overall recommendation versus just what I would call edits to the language in the job description.
Right. I'd hope you'd have that opportunity to be up here with the employees if there was enough concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And then would that also apply to, because there's a step in here that says conduct FLSA analysis and process.
Yep.
So I think what that is to identify which positions should be in which bargaining unit.
It's which ones should be exempt from overtime and which ones should be non-exempt from overtime. So now that we have the job descriptions drafted, I'm finishing that analysis. So there's, within the federal regulations and the state regulations, there's certain criteria that a position has to meet to be exempt from overtime. So I'm going through the process of doing that analysis. Obviously, if something were to change with a classification that's significant enough, I would need to redo the analysis. But it's which ones get paid overtime and which ones do not.
Okay.
Are we good? We'll open it up for, this is a discussion item. Does any of the employees want to chime in, or this is the process that's going? You haven't had the time to, go over the information that you've been given, but hopefully you can have the time to make a proper response and then get the information back to Shelley so then she can evaluate that and set up a meeting if there's concerns. So that's a process that's set in place. I doubt it we're going to discuss any particular situation right at this time since the employees haven't had the period of time to fully evaluate that. So, and then the ones, if there's people on vacation, that hopefully they can get emailed out so they have an opportunity to take a look at it before that 2-week period or so goes away, or have an extension if there is concerns and you haven't been able to resolve them, that the period could go beyond that.
Yep.
Anybody else with regards to this, the compensation and classification study? Okay?
Okay,
Well, thank you. Okay. Okay, next item we got approval of ordinance 2, 2019, electing to collect sewer service charges on the county tax roll. I wanted to ask you to make sure you're satisfied with the recording period level, but I'll do that the next board meeting.
Good morning, gentlemen. Rochelle Chavez, Administrative Services Manager. This is for the approval of Ordinance 2, 2019, electing to collect sewer service charges on a county tax roll. Per our previous discussion, and in order to increase efficiencies, we would like to elect to send our sewer service charges to the tax roll. And this is just the ordinance allowing us to do so as drafted by council. And if you have any questions, I'm willing to answer them now. Other than that, recommendation is to approve said ordinance.
I saw the notices
Yes.
went out. That was good. One thing that I did see that wasn't clear was the opportunity for the landlords to have a continued, if they so elected with their leasee, to have it directly billed to them.
That is,
Because we're only doing residential, correct? Are we going to do commercial still on the individual basis?
we are.
Okay.
So those mailers, and that mailer was also drafted by council.
Right.
And there is specific language in there that deals with landlord leasing issues.
Yes.
And so there are some very minimal commercial properties that are going to be sent to the county tax roll, but those are very simple accounts that are ones that we deal directly with the owners that haven't had any previous issues. And larger accounts, per se, like Squaw Valley, or commercial properties that have multiple tenants, like strip malls, those we're allowing more time before we do so because they're a little more detailed.
So those won't be on the next tax roll?
They will not.
Okay,
The
good.
only customers who are going to tax roll receive the mail there.
Okay.
Okay, can I ask?
Any questions, Director?
Yeah, Rochelle, a few months ago when we were talking about doing this to save money, it was in our board packet that by doing this with the county, we saved like $190,000 a year.
I
Was
believe
that
that was
figure-
the estimate, yes.
Was that figure correct?
Based on the estimate, I'd have to pull it back up to go over that, but yes. That was based on regular hours spent processing and our fees processing those payments.
Was that 190 minus the cost of the county collection fee?
That was minus the cost of
Oh, fantastic.
Why didn't we do this before now?
It was brought up to us about 10 years ago. We did, at that point, it was put to the board and the board did not act on it.
That's a lot of dough.
Correct.
I know that Ms. Chavez stated that it was going to be all residentials. As we implement this, we've received feedback from larger residential management properties that have stated that they're collecting their fees through an HOA process, and this disruption and timing would create fiscal budgeting matters for them. So for those individuals, we're trying to work with the customers as much as possible. Depending on the situation, we may take those residential units, give them time to get their budgets together, and let them be aware of what to plan for and implement them next year. So I didn't want to give a blank statement of all residential. We're doing our best to accommodate and make it as smooth for the customer as possible.
It is a little difficult for those fractional properties who are built through the HOA that plan ahead of time to take care of those payments, to work that out after the fact. So we did get some communication from other properties.
So on a ballpark basis, are we saying 90% or?
Yes.
So we'll be on the tax rolls.
Yes. We did send communication out to a little over 25,000 of our 29,000 customers.
I've got a few calls forward saying that people said they like that aspect. And they say, well, at least I could write it off. Well, I say, that's not the determination of the district. You need to see your accountant.
Good idea.
Okay. Any further board comment here? Okay. Great. So we have approval of ordinance 2, 2019. Do we have a motion for approval?
So move.
Director Pressens makes a motion.
Second.
Director Cox seconds it. Any further discussion, board? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. This isn't a roll call?
No. Don't forget, you're here, we have a roll call everything now.
Ordinance to me is generally a roll call, but that's okay.
Okay, let's go to item 3, approval to advertise and solicit bids for the digital scanning of the sewer lines.
Morning, directors. Jay Parker, engineering manager. So this item is our customary digital scanning of the TRI. So on every year we go and digitally scan that next section. So accompanying in your board packet is a figure which shows which segment we're doing this year. It's schedules 1 and 2, which is the upstreammost section. Engineer's estimate for the project is $140,000, and the work is scheduled to occur between September 3rd and October 11th. Are there any questions?
Do we have different bidders on this, or is it pretty much just, you know?
So we advertise, and that's the recommendation here is to have the directors approved for advertising. So we advertise, and then whoever wants to bid, they'll submit, they come to the pre-bid meeting,
Right.
learn about the project, and then submit bids.
It hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed as in...
Who's getting the bid?
Yeah, so sometimes we only get one bidder. Sometimes it's two. I think there was 1 year when we went to the digital scanning where we got 3. And the one that it usually goes to or has gone to in the past is ProPipe.
Right.
And in each of those cases, they were the lowest apparent responsive bidder. So it is open to everybody. We don't say, must be ProPipe. It's advertised, so whoever thinks they request the documents, if they think they're qualified, they're welcome to bid on it.
Okay. Director Tresson.
How many years have you guys been doing the 3-year cycle of the entire system? How many times have you gone through?
I think we did a pilot where we kind of wanted to learn about technology and see how compared. And some of the directors that were here back then, remember we did side-by-side comparisons between CCTV and digital scanning. We saw a huge difference. That was in 2011. 2012, we did a significantly longer stretch. I think 2013 may have been the first year where we did an entire 2 schedules, which is what we customarily would do. And then occasionally we need to fit in, like last year the Truckee River Trail reconstruction project was going on. So we had to shuffle which one we scan next, but that's what we're doing now is the trail's been built, reconstructed, and it's time to go back and digitally scan that section.
So we're doing Todd City to Manhole 56 or something, or Bridge 6?
Yeah, it's Bridge 6.
Okay.
So it's basically from the West Shore flume, which is in the Caltrans maintenance yard, down to Manhole 2, and then from there all the way down to Manhole 53, which is in the Bridge 6 vicinity.
The first go-round with the digital scanning showed so much more than we previously had, and generated a few more work orders as far as root intrusions along the TRI. Very effective.
Yeah, it has been a significant step up in our ability to see what's going on. The CCTV was oftentimes blurry, and you were at the mercy of what the CCTV operator showed you.
Right.
And with the digital scanning, you get far better resolution, and you're in control as to what you see.
The first time we did that with at Alpine, showing the under the river where on that line in 2011 was spurred that project forward.
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's very informative to see the strength and the life existing on that pipe. Which, I mean, it's been great as far as what the response has been back as far as what you've reported to us.
Yeah.
As far as wear and tear on that line.
Yeah, I mean, we were able to, you know, it's, at first you're seeing things that you haven't seen before because all you've had is a poor CCTV. And it's one of those things where you can see every little microscopic thing. But we've been able to calibrate what we see from field construction jobs. And so with the two combined of having, you know, these TRI rehab jobs that we've done recently, rehab and replacement, combined with digital scanning, we have a good picture now of you know, what the TRI looks like.
When a project like Squaw Valley comes in, okay, and they're entering into the TRI, is it part of the requirement as far as TTSA for that to be digitized, scanned after the project's completed?
So
do we have that on our ordinance, or should it be?
It's in terms of digital scanning, we see it as maybe a burden for contractors to digitally scan the segments, but we do require CCTV. And the distinction is that digital scanning is an emerging technology and it's expensive to get contractors here. And so, you know, to save everybody, you know, some angst on that, we allow the contractor to do CCTV prior to and after a construction project like Squaw.
Okay.
But then we would follow up on the heels of that when we do our digital scanning. We will be, you know, paying special attention to that area when we hit that next.
Okay.
But the type of damage, you know, that we would expect to see during construction, we would think we would be able to pick that up on just standard CCTV.
Director Wilkins.
Just a technical curiosity, it looks like this section of line crosses under the river 3 or 4 times.
Correct.
Are
It's
those
six crossings
in this section or?
in this section alone.
Okay.
6 times?
6 times.
Are those siphons or are those all gravity flow?
We are fortunate from when they built this facility originally is that we have no inverted siphons. It's a constantly downward sloping pipe.
So we can, when we do these scans, we get to see all the pipe, even at the river crossings. Because I know sometimes in siphons, I know all the time in siphons, it's more difficult to inspect.
Yeah,
You have to de-water it.
there's always headspace because of the virtue of not having inverted siphons. There's always headspace above the water surface where we can see, and we have provisions in the specs, and we advise our contractor that, you know, hey, you're going to be better off by scanning in the morning, you know, in certain sections, and before flows pick up.
Okay, thanks.
Because you have the historics on that, right?
We have the historics. We've been CCTVing as far back. We have records going way back. So.
Yeah, it's been happening since I've been here. But it's just so much improved as far as wear and tears. You know, and you have the experience. You know where the probability of the issues are going to take place when you see them.
That's why that's the primary purpose of or one of the primary purposes of why we do this. You know, another is to, you know, it's any surprises that we didn't know about.
Correct. Director Cox.
So Jay, we're going to do from Taos City to Bridge 6, you say about?
Bridge 6, yeah.
And that's what we're going to do this year.
That's what we're doing this fall.
Next year, we'll do the green line.
So we're going in reverse cycle. So basically, we're going to go purple next year and then green. So we basically work in the upstream direction.
Okay. So do we do this? So the section that we're going to video that we're approving is going to be done again in 3 years, correct?
So what we allow is for a 4-year cycle. And the reason why is that there may be a year in which construction's happening that you can't see the do that segment pipe. So yes, we do this every year, but directors may remember there have been years when we've needed to skip, on the years. And it's very infrequent, but that's why our documents are written that each segment is seen once every 4 years.
Now, Jay, you're going to have to help me out with this because I remember when we discussed this, and that is about having our own camera equipment in-house, and rather than to pay the $140,000 a year to have this work done, we discussed having our own machine and having our own truck and be able to perform this duty in-house.
Right.
Can you help me out with why we choose to do this every year at $140K?
Sure. So as I said, it's cutting edge technology, it's emerging technology. I mean, you could argue that it's been around for 10 years or so, but very few utilities, are using it. So there aren't that many contractors out there that have the equipment. So the equipment costs are very expensive. It is very expensive. It's, back when we were pricing it, it was on the order of $300,000 to $400,000 for the unit. That's not including all the extras, vehicle and all the stuff that you need with it. But I think the most complicating factor when we were evaluating was that it was the deliverable. It was the software stitching. It was the how do you because what the equipment does as a summary is just it takes thousands of digital still photos as the tractor is moving through the pipe, and the vendor, the manufacturing vendor, they stitch all those photos together to create this 3D imaging model. And we figured we didn't have the resources to be able to fit that back end in. And then this high first cost of the also factored in.
So are we talking, by the time we get a vehicle and a camera and the rig and the tractor and the hose and all this, are we talking $1 million, or are we talking $800,000? Or
I'd have to lean on other
look
districts
back?
here as to how much it costs minus the camera itself, which is several $100,000. How much a van and all that stuff is.
I think the big discussion before was the emerging technology.
Yeah.
Because these cameras, the resolutions get better and better. I mean, we could buy a $300,000 camera, and a year or two later, there's an improvement in that technology, and it gets, do we want to invest in that at this point, or do we want to rely on the professional expertise and have that done?
And that's a good point. So what we do is, we're always looking to improve our contract documents, right? So we ask the vendors, hey, are you still using the same, equipment? And what they told us is that there is about to be a new version of this coming out, new bells and whistles, et cetera. So that is a factor to keep into consideration, is that when you go out to bid, if you keep your spec, current, then you're always going to end up with the latest and greatest instead of having something that could be
Goes obsolete.
right.
yeah.
Okay, we got a motion, we have for approval. Do we have a motion for approval?
I so move.
Director Northrop makes approval for the 2019 digital scanning sewer line project. Do I have a
Second.
Director Tresson seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, now we have the long-awaited approval of TTSA, Airport District Property Exchange Agreement.
So the airport district and TTSA have been working on a land exchange over the previous couple of years, and they have come to an agreement. If you can reference your map, I'll just summarize it real briefly here. TTSA currently owns Area A. The airport district owns Area B. TTSA owns Area C. The agreement is that we would exchange Area A, the full title, along with navigation rights on C for their parcel B. And in the agreement, it defines the criteria. We have to do, create some plats, do lot line adjustments. The idea is to have a zero capital exchange, so there would have to be some cooperation between TTSA and the airport district to amend the parcel A to make sure that we kind of get as close as possible to a zero capital exchange. This is an effort that's been going on, like I said, for a couple of years with the efforts between the boards here and at the TTS, at the airport district. My recommendation is that we proceed with this. And as they progress with the agreement, because there are other steps that the airport district has to comply with.
FHA approval, correct?
FAA. So this just gives the criteria, defines how we're going to move forward in the process, make sure that all parties are aware of the criteria. And this is the first and most critical step to continue the process.
I think at this point, it'd be great to, go to the newspaper now that the agreements have been reached, now that it's a public process, and explain to the public how both of the land exchanges enhance each agency's operation. And that's what we're doing here. Because, I think it's a great thing for the airport, it's a great thing for TTSA. And to put the benefits that the airport's getting, the benefits that TTSA is getting, and the community as a whole receives from this.
I can work with the general manager at the airport district and
The press release.
most definitely.
Okay. Okay, so we have on the agenda the approval of the property exchange agreement between TTSA and the airport district. Director Wilkins, before that happens.
So I know that a portion of the property that we would be transferring to the airport district, there's a overlying lease to the school district.
Yes.
So what's been the communication with the school district about that?
I apologize if I didn't bring that up. I did reach out to the school district. I informed them of the agreement, gave them a copy of it. Their biggest concern was how does it affect their current area, which is defined by their asphalt. So they really weren't too concerned of the property south of that. But they are made aware of it. I passed it on to the facilities director, and they said that they would pass it on and move forward. If there would be any objections, they would reach out to me or show up at the board of directors meeting. I haven't received anything, so I conclude that they're content with it.
So effectively the lease would, for that undeveloped land, would continue, I guess. It's just now the airport district would be the landowner underlying the lease. And the school district and the airport district potentially need to put a new agreement in place or something like that.
Once, if this is approved, I will forward this on and reach out to the airport district. The signature line will give a fully executed copy to the school district so they're aware of it, and we'll continue to communicate with them.
Okay. And then the final property boundary configuration, when will that be established, and will the board be involved with that, or will that be an administrative task? Because I think we're trying to get the land values to balance out to being zero, which is going to mean that that final property boundary location is probably going to be adjusted so that the acreage gets to a zero net cost to either the airport district or TTSA. So when does that get finalized, and are we involved with that, or is that just happening administratively?
I anticipate that it would be done administratively. I'll reach out to the airport district, execute the contract, and we've already discussed it, plan on reaching out, hiring a consultant to perform the surveying for us. If the board would like to be a participant in the approval process for that, I can bring it back to the board for their approval. But other than that, I anticipated the managers would work on it together to come out to the end goal of $0 in exchange.
Okay.
So good. Director Cox.
So what about the well that's on parcel A?
Yeah, that belongs to the public utility district out there, that would be relinquished along with the sale. We would carry, the rights would carry with the sale.
Director Dressen?
Lou, I know that there's some hatching on parcel B that we're acquiring. That we're going to acquire some lesser quantity of property to make it balanced. What is the nature of the hatching on parcel A? It's shown on the exhibit.
When talking to the district manager, they wanted to make sure that it was understood that the way the map was identified, if there was no hatching, he felt that perhaps it meant that that was the boundary, that he wanted some flexibility within there. And I said that would be permissible.
So that means that hatched area is area outside of the boundary line for parcel A, so some additional property that might be, instead of us getting less, they might get more?
It is still within the APN. He just wants to make sure that because of the detail of the map, that there was flexibility, that when we go out and we look at the field conditions, that he'd actually like to have it moved a little bit closer one way or the other. But that we did anticipate that there was going to be some boundary changes simply to get to that zero balance, because when the appraisals came in, they did not balance it equally. But would the board like to be part of that approval process?
I would leave it up to general managers on the approval process. I mean, it's not going to change the effect of the transfer at all.
I think as long as it's within, because I think Blake's question, that hatched area, that may be an area where we transfer a little bit more land to the airport district. The red hatched area, the blue hatched area is an area where we may acquire a bit less than what the appraisal established to get to the zero net dollar cash exchange. And I think as long as the final boundaries are kind of consistent or similar to what we're seeing here, that the flex is in the hashed areas or close to it, I think I'm fine with it being done administratively.
If it exceeds that, I can bring it back to the board of directors.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Do we have a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Director Cox makes the approval. Director Northrup seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's go on to discussion of the master sewer plan level of service.
Hello again. So as you know, we're embarking and have embarked on a sewer master plan. And they are in the throes right now of kind of getting things aligned for what studies they need to do and what recommendations are in it. And one of the primary purposes of the master plan is to identify projects that fit within the goals and mission of the agency. And the way the level of service table, you might open it and go, what is this? What am I looking at? How does this fit? I think they put it best when they described that this is a good roadmap, and that is if you're going through this study and you're reviewing certain alternatives and you're asking, are we on the right path? Does this road lead us to where we want to end up? When you ask them that question, you can go to this document and go, does this alternative fit in any of these boxes? You follow that? So it's just a good way to kind of cross-check as we go through this process. Does this alternative, these alternatives X, Y, Z, do they ultimately satisfy our mission and objectives? So what Corolla did is basically they worked with staff here to identify our major goals and missions, and then they parsed those out into smaller subtasks that all support the main goal and the main mission. So staff worked with Corolla on each of these items and vetted out, removed some, added some, edited it to make sure that it was consistent with where where we think the agency got ahead. I'm happy to review the whole table if you'd like. I was just going to open it up to questions as an alternative.
I'm going to open up to questions here
Okay.
From the board. I mean, originally, 2 months ago, when we approved Corolla for the master plan, one of my concerns was how much information that they were gathering, that you were providing, how much work could you guys do as an agency that they have tasked themselves? Finding, we're just starting out with Corolla. And we have a budget number.
Yeah.
And if there's items within their proposal that, you pretty much meted out what you guys could provide to what they were providing. And I just didn't want to see any duplication as far as.
Yeah, and I haven't seen any. I mean, I'll use this table as an example. We provided pretty much the left-hand column, and it wasn't completely one-sided where we went, here you go, it's collaborative. But we mostly provided what the main agency missions or goals were. And they took it a step further and were able to do something that I think were more, I don't know what's handicapped or
Right.
whatever, that we're so focused that on our individual departments and projects and everything that it sometimes takes that outside person to see the big picture and to generate this kind of
We're too
work.
close to the woods in our daily operation to see the
Correct.
forest.
So I see a good pairing.
Yeah.
I don't see duplication where, and I mean, we'll monitor as we go. But I don't expect to see duplication.
Okay. The end document coming forward in a year and a half or so will give us hopefully the guidance and the guidelines for the future plant expansion rates. Those are the informations that we are expecting as a board.
Absolutely. I mean, we all expect that as well. We need to know where we're headed, that we're heading in the right direction.
Correct. Dr. Wilkins, do you have a question?
Yes, so I think this is a good starting point, just to identify broad goals and then slightly more specific, strategies to achieve those goals. I think where things will get, I think we're going to progressively work into more detail.
Yes.
On the plan. We're starting broad and now we'll get very specific. And I guess for that, in terms of how specific we're going to get, we've got our existing facilities that have a certain useful life that we may be partially or all the way into. Is that kind of an update? Is that kind of an inventory, a part of Corolla's work scope, where we would, because I think as it relates to the capital replacement component of our rates, it gets into how frequently are we going to replace certain capital assets. That's one component of it, and there's a lot of work that is involved with looking at how old are our existing capital assets, how soon will they need to be replaced. It's kind of like, it's capital replacement, but it's almost like an operating issue, which is different than a plant expansion issue. And are they looking at both?
Yeah, so funny you bring that up, timing-wise. So next week, there's a 3-day wall-to-wall walkthrough of the facility with all us managers to review exactly what you're talking about. It isn't just about, do you have a capacity that, do we need more clarifiers or do we need more, O2 basins or whatever. It's also about our existing infrastructure, how old is it? Is it at the end of its useful life? how much are we spending operating and maintaining that facility? Do we need to be thinking about replacing certain items or rehabbing certain facilities? So yes, that is included in their scope, an important aspect, and that is being done. The preliminary parts of that are being done next week.
Okay. And I would assume that would also look at opportunities for technology enhancements where, the way the plant was built in the 70s, there may be new technology that allows it to be operated more efficiently that
Yes,
could be incorporated into the plant replacement, plant upgrade projects in the future.
yes, and that is also part of their scope, slightly different part of the scope, but yes, that's included. And there'll be, this plant was built in the 70s and things are done very differently today when you build a new plant. And so they would be evaluating alternatives that, make more sense from bottom line and from just a lot of different economic and non-economic perspectives.
So do they have the CH2 on the Hill report on the plant expansion when it was done 10 years ago?
They've been offered our list of reports, which is about 700. We gave them a table of contents of about 700 different reports and studies. They're still digesting that in terms of which items they would like to,
Right.
but we've given them a ton of information.
Okay. So you don't feel they're lacking any information that we paid for back in a time that would be useful to them as far as looking at the school plan?
They have asked, the project report, they've asked for some key things that they're using.
Good. Okay. Director Chesson?
I really like this starting point here. It's pretty dense, as I've been trying to review it. There's a lot for me to take in. I guess my question would be, one, did the whole management team get involved in all this and in seeking board input on these levels of service? Are there any particular items that maybe you guys were on the fence about the way it's written and really are seeking our input? Or are you really comfortable with it? Nothing jumped out at me, but I don't know whether there's any specific line items in here that you're looking for a little more detail from the board on in terms of the direction, because it could influence, you see it influencing, the direction of the report going.
Okay, yeah, so I did distribute it, we met as a group, we went through line by line, we made changes, additions, modifications. So we feel comfortable with where this is, but, it's new directors that we'd like for you to be happy with this, because we're doing this, we want to do it right, and so if there's anything that stands out to you, we'd like to hear about it.
Yeah, again, I just, it all seemed to read well, but you guys know, we dug into it deeper. Again, if there were any, some of them are pretty obvious, manage it financially, fiscally sound, but some of them maybe are more subtle, and it was, you worded it one way thinking this is good versus perhaps something else. And I just want to make sure that if there was anything in there that, that I'm not picking up on, that you really want our confirmation that that's the right way, or, there was a debate over something as to how it should be prepared.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't any, there's
highlight that.
Yeah, in these discussions where maybe you have difference of opinions of, you have I think, and then you have somebody else that does, I think. I didn't feel like we had any ones. I think we were all pretty consistent, but I'll open it to other managers in LaRue if you have any items you want to highlight.
We went through it, we are comfortable with it
Okay.
because of the magnitude of the project, and this is the roadmap for the future. We just wanted to make sure the board was up to speed on it, was aware of it. If there's anything that was a concern, we would hope that you would let us know and we can address it accordingly. But we as a group, as management team, are comfortable with the direction.
Yeah, my first review, it seemed good. Again, I was just curious whether there were any specific items that you wanted additional input on.
Right. Director Wilkins?
Just following up on Blake's comments, a couple of things I was encouraged to see. There's really 5 categories in the 2 tables that we've got, and 3 of them are very, I call it kind of nuts and bolts operations based. Operate and maintain the wastewater treatment plant.
in a sound, efficient, effective manner, and protect assets and investments through sound financial policies and practices, and improve service through long-range planning and wise use of technology. So I see those as kind of nuts and bolts operational type goals, and then methods to achieve those goals. What I was also encouraged to see in there was the broad goal of maintain a workplace that fosters professional growth and job satisfaction. So recognizing that the employee component is an important part of our long-range planning. And then also the goal of leading the discussion of strategy development for regional wastewater issues for the benefit of all customers and the environment. Which, when you read the goal, it's focused on wastewater, but when you look underneath that, it looks to me to be a bit broader than just wastewater. You know, there's been discussion of those kinds of
That's the
things.
next item we got on here, as far as that, how that's going to incorporate in here.
Yes, so I think it's positive, you know, that we're recognizing that the you know, employee, you know, goals associated with employees and properly trained employees and a good work environment are incorporated on equal footing as kind of the nuts and bolts type items. And, you know, recognition that, you know, TPSA is a major landholder in the region, and that we may have things that we can offer that are consistent with our goals that are above just making sure that the wastewater gets treated. So I think that's positive.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a bunch of positive. But when I read this, you know, it's very positive and forward-looking in a good way.
You know, I brought it up earlier as far as none of you were here. You were just coming on board when we were doing the first go-around with the plant expansion. I just want to make sure that institutional knowledge that we paid for with CH2 and Hill, that we weren't losing any of it and we weren't having to duplicate it. That's my concern.
Yeah, and
because you guys are all a new crew, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, and so recall I was on the design for the original. I was project manager at Hill for the expansion project.
Right.
During the construction period. And so for bid phase, construction, et cetera, you know, and I was leading the charge on the design, you know, from Reading.
Right.
So I wouldn't let that happen. I mean, if they were going down the path of recreating a wheel,
Right.
I'd be stepping in and saying, no, we've already looked at that.
Okay. Good. All right. Well, so thank you, Jay. Do we have any
other questions?
I assume, you know,
Yeah.
this isn't our one and only shot at this. I mean, I think the roadmap's good, but clearly as, you know, the project moves forward and maybe some of these things become more concrete, we have opportunities to, you know, steer the ship slightly.
Sure.
But I appreciate the opportunity to look at it at this point and see where you guys are headed real good.
Yeah, I would look at this as that we're heading to, you know, San Francisco, but we may, you know, and our intent is to, you know, go on I-80 there, but we may take a side road because there's traffic, you know.
Yep.
So yeah, we can make adjustments as we go, but primarily we'd like to approval for the board to adopt this as the point in which we move forward, starting with now, and then we can make adjustments later if we need to.
Okay.
So, sound good?
All right. Thank you. Okay. Let's go on to discussion, item 6, discussion and energy use and conservation and recovery, the SEED program.
This incorporates more than the SEED program, but I will give an update to the SEED. I did reach out to the project manager on there and did receive a response. So they were able to assign a project manager for the cumulative project, meaning a district in South Lake Tahoe is taking that on. So they're anticipating within the next 5 to 6 weeks, they're going to issue some RFPs, and they'll be in contact with me again to start determining where the ideal location of the solar panels are. So it was a lot to absorb in one quick response of an email. I was just happy to receive the response. So I will be following up with him to get more details exactly what these general statements are that he provided. But the takeaway was we're moving on it again, but I will be getting more detail. So that's the update to SEED, but that's not the purpose of the agenda item. What I wanted to do, and at the request of the previous board meeting, was that we should have a discussion on the energy use, conservation, and recovery. Not only does it affect the current SEED direction we're going with solar panels, and we're doing our master plan, that's going to have some impact on that. So I wanted this agenda item to be opened up to the board of directors to discuss how the agency is utilizing its resources. I would like to reuse some of its resources and any requests moving forward in addition to the work done for the master plan.
Okay. So is this going to go in stages?
The solar panels?
Yeah.
Yes. I need to get more information from him.
Yeah.
When he says we're going to go with the RFP, without going up with proposals, we haven't nailed down a site. I'm a little confused about the details. So I will be reaching back out to him. He responded real quick, threw out some responses. But like I said, I was happy just to get a response. Now I just need to follow it and go, all right, please further explain this. Let me get caught up to speed. I don't know how many communities or districts are involved. I don't have very much detail. But again, it's been a while since he's responded, so I'll view it as a positive step.
Yeah.
However, based on this discussion that we have here, if we find out that that is not the direction we want to continue, as I give you updates on that there is a provision in the agreement where we can withdraw from that agreement.
So you're also looking at other alternatives to saving resources?
Right, so the way we're viewing it now is we proceeded with the SEED program because it was a beneficial program that the agency could take advantage of and save some design costs and what have you there. When it comes to the master plan, we're viewing that as another opportunity to determine if there's any efficiency savings there, such as cogeneration and what have you. We had planned on a capital improvements project from last year that our digesters were going to be looked at and how we could reuse some of those resources. We've kind of shelved that one because it would be a redundant work for the master plan. So at this point, our expectation is that we would let the master plan proceed, let them make some recommendations on the improvements, that will define what the energy uses are, improvements or removal of processes, and we can make a better assessment on needs there. But I think it would be a good opportunity to get the board's feeling on how they'd like the agency to move forward on that. We're looking at reuse of solar panels. Are there any other efforts that the board would like staff and myself to look into, follow up with, come back with more information?
Why aren't we looking at heating that we currently do with methane and, as far as renewable
We did.
processing here?
Months ago, we actually reached out to some vendors, and it wasn't enough to get a lot of interest from them to respond, and I think that's because we're not generating enough gas to offset the excess, because the ambient temperatures we have to contend with here, I think we use quite a bit of it during the process. But that was part of the whole scope of getting into the digesters. I mean, we could push it more, we just didn't see that as a real viable option to go after. I thought it'd be best to wait and see what the direction was going to be with the master plan, but that could be alternate anytime.
And Corolla will be, if I can add, Corolla will be looking at, gas generation, cogen opportunities, gas usage, plant heating, as part of the master plan effort from a global perspective. Does it make sense?
How does that seed integrate with that? I mean, are they,
So the
who's
seed-
giving who the information?
I thought seed was only solar, is that correct?
Seed is solar. What we would do, and I anticipate, is that we'll be providing them our usage, and they will make a determination, a recommendation on where the panels would go and what the offsets might be. That was an independent project with the master plan. I anticipate that when we size those, it would be on a modular basis, so we would probably size them for where we're at now. And then as improvements come in, we can add them in as we go. So the intent of the seed isn't to plan for the future, it's just to offset currently what we have towards feasible and financially sound for us.
Dr. Cox?
As I remember, we discussed this a few months ago, And one of the concerns we had as an agency was storage and energy storage. And is this going to address any of that concern about the storage capabilities of this solar?
For the SEA program, no. We did have a question on storage. That's one of the downfalls with the solar panels. So I would assume we would size this to offset as much as we can during the high demand peak hours. And we would be subject to the grid and their power source during the evening hours. So to answer your question, no, there is no discussion on storage as
Do you think that it would behoove us to ask for some kind of information on storage and the potential of having a storage capability?
I could inquire on that. I don't think that's in the scope of the SEA program, but I'm more than willing to reach out to other potential options there.
I have a question. Would you also look at the balance of cost versus return on like light tubes for in the office area?
We have done some minor we've had some minor consultants that come in and look at our current bulb usage going to LEDs and stuff like that. So we are doing that.
I'd like to.
You don't have to.
$3 cost of battery. That's a lot lower than that.
Right. Yeah, so we are looking at the usage here.
Okay, well, I mean, this is just an item for discussion, where do we want to go with it?
I guess my comment is, I'm curious that one seed is said they're going out for RFPs. I mean, we haven't heard anything about capacity or anything, so it'll be interesting to see where they go. I think a lot of this will play out in this master planning document. I guess, going to that level of service category about being a part of the community that Dan referenced, I would just say that, it'd be good for us to keep our eyes open, be involved in the community. There's a lot of discussion about beyond just our energy demands. We're a huge energy consumer. We're kind of an industrial site, and looking for opportunities to partner with other community members for community solar. There's opportunities for potentially biomass as Tykert phases out their operations. I've heard interesting technology out there, and the community could certainly benefit possibly from a more local place to convert biomass to electricity. We've, again, huge energy consumer here of electricity, and haul our biosolids off to Nevada, and if we can reduce our hauling costs as part of that. So just keeping our eyes open, not just focused on exactly what our needs are, but looking at the broader community, particularly in this range, could end up with a benefit that serves not only the district but the broader community as a whole. Just reaching out to whether it's the fire districts or the county, as you see opportunities arise, and trying to be proactive in terms of engaging with them on these projects that may be arising. I don't know of anything specific at this point, but just
More eyes on the subject.
Just
Okay, as far as better.
we have opportunities here to provide a community benefit above and beyond just offsetting our electricity needs with a phenomenal solar facility. There's other opportunities, and for us to try and play that role would be great.
Okay, well, go ahead.
So the SEED program is one of, there's probably a dozen vendors that are doing business that overlap our area. It's like design build solar is how I simplify it in my mind, where companies will come in and they'll do an evaluation of what your energy use is, what your production potential is based on land resources. We're very fortunate that we've got significant land resources in a great area from a solar exposure standpoint, which is a constraint that most folks have that we don't. I always get a little bit cautious because these design build vendors have a financial interest in kind of erring on the side of producing information that would suggest that we're going to save a lot of money sooner than we might, right? There's assumptions that go into the technical analysis as to how much electricity you'll generate, how much it'll cost to put it in. There's a lot of details there. I know there's also vendors out there that are more like typical, designers, that they're not trying to sell you something on the back end. They're just consultants who can come in and work for you to do what would be a fair analysis. It may be an analysis that's a bit more conservative. And what I'm curious about is if we're going to continue to explore this conversation about solar generation, and with Dale's comments about, gee, if we're going to look at solar, should we also kick the tires on what battery backup looks like? But if the SEED program is that they don't deal with batteries, they just deal with solar panels, should we consider, hiring a person with expertise in this area that works
Well, I
for
think
us?
that's going to come out in the Carrillo report. I mean, they should be evaluating some of that as far as the energy consumption and use efficiencies.
Certainly within plan, like, use of digestion gas, digestion gases, as to whether solar, which could be carved out as a separate, that one may or may not be included.
The solar is a part of the scope of the master plan, but we could contact and hire a consultant to perform these services for us. I think that would be counter to what the whole intent of the SEED process was, because that's where the cost savings was. I do get reached out by numerous vendors constantly, and they're willing to perform this work too, that I'm sure they have a vested interest as well as they're pitching to their product. We can reach out to a consultant and go together with the SEED plan and use the consultant as a backup if you want, or we can.
So what I've seen is some agencies will use the consultant as a set of eyes that have expertise in the field to see if the work you're getting out of the SEED program is a sales pitch or if it's a fair analysis, and fill in the gaps where, if, for instance, we wanted to kick the tires on battery backup, the SEED program doesn't have the capability to do that. Potentially, they could, fill in that gap for us in terms of looking at cost effectiveness of that and like where the technology is heading. Is the technology towards battery backup continuing to get more efficient, less expensive? So maybe it's worth waiting a few years, or is it gotten to a point where it's as cheap as it's going to get, and you just make a decision to move forward with it now or not? There's those types of things in this industry that there's people with expertise in it that could give us good advice probably if we're serious about looking at it.
What's your recommendation?
From the feedback I've received from the SEED program, I'm not really pleased with them. I've reached out to them on numerous occasions. They have been non-responsive. And then the quick email response I get is we're going to RFPs, we pick somebody, here's the update, and there's a lot of information in between. I have yet to make the determination, are they giving me the response that they think I want to hear, or is that where we're really at? And if that's where we're really at, they've kind of left us out in that process.
Right.
We can proceed down that path because there are further checks and balances with it. But if that's the first indicator of how this project's going to go, I am a little concerned. I think if we go and do the consultant route, which will give that different perspective and look at other options for us, we should remove ourselves and terminate that agreement we have them, and there are provisions with them, because in that SEED agreement, there are criteria that list if we're going to proceed with any other process with solar panels, they are the ones that are going to be providing it to us unless we terminate the agreement. So my recommendation is that if we want to go with the consultant route, we should do it sooner than later, or ride SEED out for a couple of months.
Would we have to terminate it? Like if we hired someone that was an expert in this kind of stuff, would we have to kick SEED to the curb right now, or could we have them come in and advise us on whether that's the best way to go?
They can do like a quality control and give recommendations on it. If they decide to say that you should go with this product, this manufacturer, or this sizing as counter to what the seed is, then we would get out of the agreement, because it would be subject to the recommendations and designs.
I have a question, Wade. Go ahead.
You know, as I see this, we have two different situations here with solar. We have keeping the lights on, and we have running some of the equipment out there that has extremely high energy demands. Now, if we're talking about keeping the lights on, that's one thing, but when we're talking about generating the horsepower that's needed, or the wattage or amperage or whatever is needed to run some of our motors that are out there in the plant, we're talking about a significant amount of solar panels to be able to generate a useful product to make it worthwhile to save us money. That's the first thing. The second thing is there any other water treatment facility out here in the state of California that's addressing this as a potential money saver?
Yeah, there are other agencies. That's what the seed program does. It reaches out to other districts and they assist us through that process. So I can't think of any offhand, but I do know that there are some places that utilize it. We could reach out.
Are you utilizing it, LaRue, to run these big motors, or to turn the lights on and off?
I would assume they did their analysis and maybe a corporation, a combination of
They're
both.
running 100%.
I think, different perspective, it's not really doing either of those things. I don't think we're talking about batteries here a little bit, but generally you're on a net metering agreement, you're still tied to the utility. It's providing the electricity you need, and when the solar panels are going, if they're overproducing what you're consuming, the meter runs backwards and you're putting it into the grid. If they're producing less, then you're drawing less from the grid, but you can size it however you want. It's just a net metering thing. You're never shutting off the utility and expecting the solar panels to independently provide lights or power for your equipment. You could design something like that, but I don't recommend that we go that route. Unless, technology really changes, I would strongly discourage the district explore, disconnecting ourselves from the utility and trying to be electrically independent. A week like this, when we're going to be in the cloud, it just doesn't make sense. So we always have power because the utility's there. Back to your point, Lou, I don't see the need that I'd like to proceed, keep this ball rolling, but now that seed is communicated, I don't see that there's a reason for us to jump onto a consultant today or I don't think that we should encourage staff to go find a second consultant. Let's see what seed comes up with. The concept was to do a project that could potentially save us some money and offset some costs of other things, and let's see where they go and, give them 2 or 3 months, and if, they still are unresponsive or they haven't come up with something, then maybe we, retain a consultant and move forward with, our own independent design concept for solar here.
I could provide a monthly update.
Let's do it with that. We're talking, let's see what they're going to bring back to us and then go from there. Let's put it on the agenda for next month. Keep it in front of us and keep following through. And at some point, if it becomes an issue that we want to go out and do something on our own, or whether we utilize seed, that discussion will become as we get more information.
Right.
Okay? So,
Yeah.
quick, John.
Just one thing is, you can use submarine batteries to store the power. That's what they did at my grandmother's ranch. She had a windmill that filled up water and then stored the electricity in submarine batteries, which ran the whole ranch. The technology is changing rapidly, so we can wait a little while and probably gain some something else.
Okay, so we got direction. Okay, let's go, at this point, let's go on to item 7, discussion and action on abatement of CalPERS retirement pension plan.
have here a follow-up on the topic of the UAL, or unfunded accrued liability from previous board meetings. So hopefully you had a chance to read the valuation reports provided to you. They were valuation reports provided to us in 2017 from CalPERS for both the Classic and the PEPRA. And what we have here basically is showing the average UAL for Classic employees is $15.8 million, and the average UAL for PEPRA employees is the $27,000, average of $27,000. The reason for the big difference is because the PEPRA is such a newer program that we have less unfunded liability, of course, and the employees are paying more of a higher percentage of their own plan. Let's see, based on previous discussion, we have attached in the last page of that section the UAL amortization schedule showing the actual that we are currently under, the 30-year amortization schedule. That shows our minimum required payment, and then it also shows what we discussed, a 15-year, 10-year, and 5-year proposed additional discretionary payment. So this would be the payment that we would make instead of making just our minimum required payment. We propose making the 5-year amortization schedule payment, not conforming or changing our plan, but paying as if we did. So we retain our 30-year schedule, but pay it down faster so that we are not restricted to that 5-year schedule. Should we need the funds, they're still available and we're not tied to that schedule. So we would still be on the 30-year plan, but pay as if we were on the 5. And if at any time we chose to switch back, we could do that. So looking at the graph, our first payment here, the $858, was our payment for the 18-19 year. So for 19-20, our July payment would be the 3.5. Questions?
Well, we're talking about this and how this, within a 5-year period, because it is costing us, 7 or 7.25% a year for cost of this. And by getting it down within a 5-year basis, based on our current reserves and everything, how does that affect our reserve fund? Because this is a major pay down. But it is a major operational cost saving once it's done. Because 7.25 on 15 million is huge.
If I can address this is the table that was presented when I spoke months ago when we were establishing an emergency reserve fund. So what we did was we looked at the 15, 10-year, 5-year schedules here and how the impact would be on our finances. And when we reviewed it, we were comfortable setting aside the $4 million, knowing that if we were to go, that we could potentially go to a 5-year schedule and still have sufficient funds to cover our needs at that time.
Yeah, that's what we discussed before. So.
And then the direction was, please bring it back to the board for further discussion before we make an additional payment. Make sure the board was in agreement that the direction would be to pay the additional monies to knock down our UAL.
So when you talk about paying this off in 5 years, is that what you're saying? Well, we're looking at roughly a $3 million a year payment.
Give or take. Give or take.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're paying
Seven, exactly.
on that.
And if you look at the bottom of the schedule there, it shows We would be saving the interest payment there, a total of $11 million in interest over the term of the loan.
Director
Of
Tresson,
the
go
UA
ahead.
loan.
So, no, I'm pleased that staff's brought this back. I think it makes sense for us to be making these additional discretionary payments against our unfunded accrued liability. The magnitude of it is the question, and I was pleased to see you said that, and you just reinforced that you've run the 5-year amortization and you don't see any significant impacts to the agency. I guess, those are pretty significant chunks of payments made. Are those being borrowed from other board designated reserve funds that we have to pay back? Are those coming out of our general fund? I just haven't seen the analysis that shows, the going on a 5-year plan, how that actually, where the money's come from that makes that work.
So we did, they do come out of the general plan. If I recall back to the presentation before, I showed you where the historical data was, where what our expenditures were, what our revenues were, did a trend based on that, made a projection, defined that there were going to be projections, and then we showed where the capital or cash balance was going to be based on each effect, and I demonstrated that graphically. And when we did this, there was quite a few million back in the bank there. I apologize, I don't have the report here, but we had the discussion because that was the determining factor of our comfort level to see what we wanted to put into our emergency reserve fund. I can bring that back at the next board meeting if you'd like to see that prior to making this.
Are we going to be reviewing the budget for TTSA at our June meeting?
That was one of the next item points. I was hoping to have that postponed as written up in here. Just simply because we could have a full fiscal year of data for preparation.
The reason I ask is, to Blake's point, incorporating this kind of a decision as a part of a budget process is a good place to understand what effects spending the money here has elsewhere or not.
We talked about it back, we talked about this and getting this reduced, I think, by going with, obviously doing the first payment that we have here and incorporating that into the budget is what we should do currently. Now, and every year we're going to be reviewing this, but hopefully we have a plan for 5 years. It becomes that we're taking down that emergency reserve fund and we feel that the emergency reserve fund's not adequate, that we review it on that period. But right now, to take that down right now, I believe the reserve fund is more than adequate what we have in place, and that we should start doing it right now.
You're saying make the 2019 payment?
Absolutely.
The $858,000.
So that was last year.
3.5?
The 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah.
3.5 for
How many
1920.
employees are going to be retired in the next 5, 10, 15, 30 years? Do we have any kind of a handle on that or not?
Based on the evaluation, they took that in there. I don't personally have a count exactly which ones are.
The actuary should have taken that into effect
Yeah.
on this graph, correct? Okay, so that's where we're at. I mean, we're basing it on the actuarial that we have here. And that answers your question, Director Tresson.
So, a couple things. One, we need to be cognizant that, we pay off this, it's not like it's gone. Every year, they reevaluate, and if the market doesn't perform to the CalPERS projected market rate, guess what? It shows back up again. So we could go, just so that we're all clear, 5 years from now, when we told them we're going to pay it off in 5 years, if we went with this plan, we could have still a couple $1 million of unfunded liability that's grown over the last 5 years as the market has underperformed. At the same time, if the market overperforms, I could say that what we did at TSD is we set a goal of trying to reach a 90% funded status. You don't necessarily want to pay it all off, because if the market overperforms, that benefits you, and
You're not going to get the money back.
well, you do, it kind of goes in the bank and sits there for a while, but if the market somehow continuously or for a long period of time overperforms, which I would say is unlikely, it's not a position you want to be in. You've got a bunch of money that you put in there that you're not being able to access. And so I think a 90%, we fell on a 90% funded strategy to try and get there. And so, and I would have, I would not have qualms making a substantial payment against UAL this year. I would like to see some type of, cash flow analysis of our reserves over time that help me in, the long range thing. I'm not prepared to say, make a motion to go with a 5-year amortization payoff schedule at this point. But at the same time, I wouldn't hesitate to say let's, above and beyond our $858,000, if we want to put, $1 million or even $2 million, I know that saves almost double that amount in eventual interest savings to it, and then task staff with developing this plan and something that we should track on an annual basis, depending on how our finances are, make decisions on these, annual discretionary payments and additional discretionary payments.
Well, the pay down compounds. Once we make a payment, then we have less of a cost down the road. And obviously, the first one is going to have the most effect. But it's a situation, if we have it in place, that we look at it based on a 5-year period, and then we evaluate it every single year going forward. Like you said, the stock market's doing great this year. Maybe less than that, but I think as a board, we need to take the responsibility here to get this liability paid down.
So what is, at this point, again, I wouldn't, I think we're looking for a recommendation from staff for a discrete, they're called additional discretionary payments, above and beyond, whereas a part of the UAL we have to pay every year, and it looks like that for this year was this $858,000.
That was the payment we made this fiscal year. So the next payment for being in July of fiscal year 1920 would be the 2.4.
But that's,
sorry, the 3.5 million.
Yeah,
but if you look at the 30-year amortization table, it's actually, the required payment is only $1 million.
Correct.
But we're looking at doing an additional discretionary payment on top of that, because we're not going to contract with them on a 5-year amortization schedule. This is all, anything above and beyond those payments that are shown, and those can vary a little bit in that 30-year chart, are additional discretionary. So above and beyond the $1 million that we're required to pay, are you guys looking for us to make a total payment of?
If I did it, there's a couple reasons why this is coming on. There's one that the board requested this number come back. To be clear, we will maintain the minimum payments in the 30-year amortization. You have to. So that will be paid. That is really not a discussion that I hope to be deviated from. We are anticipated and budgeted for that amount. What we're trying to do is get the board's comfort level on how much they want to address and tackle the UAL. So when we came in to discuss about the 5-year amortization, the intent wasn't to say, today's approval, we're going to stick to it, and actually cleared this up earlier, is to present it to you. Here's the potential we have. There are fluctuations in the market. This report is dated for 2017, but we received to us last year, about a year ago. We're expecting another one in the next couple months. The intent is to make the ADP and then bring it back to the board with an updated actuarial on an annual basis to see where the comfort level is at that time.
If you put more in, you still earn interest on that money that's in there sitting.
We're not earning interest, we're paying out.
No.
7.25%.
Yeah, but if you overpay,
Like paying down your mortgage.
There's benefits to us paying into it, yes.
Director Cox.
I would say that we should address paying as much as we can on this without putting any of the capital improvement projects that are out there in the future at risk. Each one of the departments, you guys came to us several months ago when we first started addressing this with a forecast of capital improvement projects that we were really looking at that needed to be done, correct?
But those are two different funds, correct?
Yeah, they get the capital improvements, you know, depending on what type of project it is, they do come from two different funds. And we did that, when I did the presentation, I believe in October, we did take into account the capital improvements we have. Is there any way we can access the board package from October?
Yes.
I think that's what it was, just to refresh the conversation. I think it was in October.
So just paying off an extra $1 million a year is going to save us several $100,000.
Depends on which basis you do it, but it's like almost $2 in interest saved for every dollar paid off, a little less than
It's
that.
more than that, because like what you have is, you know, we're only on that reserved money in that emergency reserve fund, we're earning less than 2%, and it's costing us 7.25. And if the biggest question is, what is our safety comfort zone in
Yep.
emergency reserve funds?
right.
That's the question we have
We should
here.
have a reserve policy that we stay within,
That is correct.
unless we decide to exceed that.
That's where I was headed.
We
Right.
do have $4 million in a reserve fund that was set aside. So the previous discussion we had was to determine what was the agency's comfort level on what the emergency was for. That analysis was based on doing the study of the numbers I ran here, but we decided we would set those four aside that were designated for emergency purposes. We knew what our capital improvements budgets were going to be. We knew what our projections are on our expenditures and revenues were going to be. And that left us a certain amount of revenue that we wanted to feel comfortable towards paying into this. There are going to be fluctuations on how the performance of the monies are going to be. There could be a change, which I think is expected for the capital improvements, because these are capital improvement projects that we as staff and management have made. The Corolla Master Plan may come in and come up with a complete different list of improvements, which could or could not cost more. It will definitely have an effect to what magnitude. We don't know until that report's done. So you do have those factors here, but it was directed to come back with the option to pay this UAL down and to bring some scenarios. So to not muddy the waters too much, we brought back the same table that we had here that was based on a previous report to refresh the conversation and to see if the board was willing to decide on what amount to put down. This is just a projection, a proposal for a 5-year plan. If we decide that we don't like that listing, we can go an additional $1 million of additional discretionary payment on there. I recommend we pay something down. It's just determining what that level of comfort is. If we want to wait until the next actuarial comes in, wait for the master plan comes into the budget, we can do so. But I feel comfortable that we can make a payment of $3.5 million and we would be able to handle some projected improvements in costs.
Okay, that was the exact conversation we had back in October. I was out there wanting to pay down more, but, that puts us in a issue that let's get this first payment in, let's base it on a 5-year basis, but let's look at it every single year to see where we are. And we may, like you said, 90% may be a good thing, but initially we need to start. It doesn't make sense if we got all this, if we got the money in the reserve funds above what we feel comfortable with, and we're getting 2%, and it's costing us 7.25%. It doesn't make financial sense to keep that money in play.
Wait, you don't have to convince me. I believe that as well.
Yeah.
The question is what is the appropriate amount? Of what, and we could even make. I know that we're lining this up. It looks like for payments in our fiscal year 1920. We're still in fiscal year, 1819 until July 1. So we could make a payment this year. I don't know that it gets incorporated into the valuation report, but I know we've made the $858,000 payment, but we can still do an additional discretionary payment in this year's budget, and staff can make that payment now. So
the intent is we would in preparation of our budgets, identify what that amount is going to be. We've already paid it for this fiscal year. It's due July 31st. We would approve the budgets for it. The intent was to initially approve the budgets for it, identify what that payment amount, which is going to be based on the conversation we have here. So we could potentially indicate for budgeting purposes the minimum requirement for the 30-year amortization, and then have a further conversation. But I was hoping I could revisit this presentation real briefly one more time. Can you go to the next slide? So if you go to, this is the right one. What you have here are the funds that are applicable for the payment of the UAL. So what you see in Table 1 are just our fund balances as of July 1st, 2018.
What are those numbers?
Yeah.
Those are the, can you zoom out on that one?
Bring it a little larger, so we gather around the screen.
Lane, I have a question. What if you went with a 5-year plan and then you maybe extended a year in a year? Or could you see that?
I'm only asking for one motion.
I'm saying
29 million.
extend it out.
Do you mind if I just go up there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please do.
Yeah, please.
Scrolling here.
Is this the-
There we go.
Can I close this?
There you go, 29.6.
Lowest one.
So if you see here, the intent of this was to show the balances as of that date. I apologize, my back is to you. I'm looking at that screen there. You have approximately 29.6, we'll call it $30 million here. Again, we're just going to talk in rough round numbers just to give the idea. So you knew the available balance that was applicable towards the UAL. When you start looking at the historical data here on this table 2, it's from 2003 to projected is 2023. So what you see here is your revenues and expenditures.
And those are operating revenues and operating expenses.
Correct.
So the difference there would be funds available for capital replacement.
Correct. So what I was trying to do is making sure we can get a projection on what our allocation is going to be and what our income was going to be so we didn't overextend ourselves. So when you look at this real briefly, you can see based off of the operating revenues, they're kind of consistent. We kind of do the same thing day in and day out. What you're going to see are increases, so you anticipate it because prices go up with inflation and what have you there. You start looking at the expenditures. They do go back and forth. Again, when I created this, it was the intent just to give the overall picture. So there are probably some areas in there where projects were put in. But the intent of the graph is just to create the trend. Just to display that prices are going up and our operating revenues are going up and our operating expenditures are going to have to, we're spending more as we go as well. So what this is the, I believe the table you have in front of you. This is drafted off CalPERS spreadsheet. They gave us a spreadsheet. They allowed us to identify the periods we wanted to apply into it. Their amortization report shows you a constant discount rate of 7.25%. However, when they run the numbers, they actually have a phased-in approach, which is 7%, which is what they're actually anticipating it's going to be. So when you start comparing the valuation report's 30-year amortization compared to the sheets, they are different, and that's what the difference here. But what you have here is the data that's reflective of what CalPERS had presented to us. It's not a linear amortization because there's different funds that are coming in. The intent is just to show you what the numbers were and give the impact, overall impact of paying down the amount. Very similar to paying a house. So the sooner you pay it off, the more interest you're saving.
You know what? Our camera went off.
Oh, it did?
Yeah. It's sure like, I mean, at least my screen went blank and that red dot will blank.
Yeah. So this chart was just nothing more than a visual graph of the cumulative, the annual payments. And as you can see, in order, the shorter the payment, the higher the payment's going to have to be. It's just nothing more than a graph of the previous tables that we did there.
But you're going to end up saving you money.
Yeah, when you have interest.
Pay it out back, and you save more money. It's just what your comfort level is with your reserve level. Yeah.
So here is the cumulative side of it. So we looked at the annual side, so now we're looking at the cumulative side of it. And as expected, the shorter you pay it, less interest, the less of an impact cumulatively it's going to have on the age. So this is just all prepping just to give the overall expense of how this is going to tie into, overall picture of how it's going to tie into ours. So we looked at 20 year 19 through 2023. We had a starting balance, which if you recall, went back to the table 1. We have our projected total revenues and expenditures here.
Is there a way to make that larger?
Yeah. Sorry, guys. And the intent was to show the financial impact based on the amortization that we took. So if I recall correctly, you have your fund balance, your revenue, expenditures. That's the balance after you have your payment assigned for that 30-year schedule for that year. And what it is here for under each amortization. As you see, the first year, 2019, they're all the same because that's just the constant. We agreed we were going to pay the minimum requirement on that for that year. However, when you see there's a larger payment applied for each one of these schedules, the balances are different. In summary, if you were to go with a 30-year amortization by the year 2023 rolls around, you'll still have a balance of $25 million in the bank. Granted, it's still not paid off, or you still have a balance on your UAL. However, if you have your UAL of a 5-year amortization, minus the variations, if you paid that off on their schedules provided by Caliper sheet, you would have a balance of $15 million. And what this did was to set the stage for making a determination on our emergency fund. So to graphically display it better, 30 years black, 15, blue, green, 10, red is 5. And as you would suspect, the larger the payments, the less balances you have on the shorter term. But again, the idea was just to get our comfort level on what we wanted to do for emergency reserve fund. And the conclusion of this agenda item at that time was to set a $4 million emergency reserve fund for that. So then that's what we did. So now we're coming back with, and during this discussion, the idea was to come back with a plan on what the proposed plan for a UAL for the remainder of our stuff is. So we're not locking in a 5-year commitment to what it is. It's just getting the board's comfort level of how much, if they want to pay in addition to the minimum requirement of the $1.06 million based on the 30-year amortization. That will change next year based on how the returns are on the investments and how CalPERS is doing with that. And we can bring that up next year. But I think for the purposes for the discussion here, we have enough information just to get an idea as to how aggressive and the comfort levels the board of directors has. And that's what we're asking for.
So, at this stage of the conversation, we're looking at $3,535,000 as a payment for 2019.
Yes.
Correct. And after 2019, when we go to 2020, we're going to review that payment at that time by looking at what we have in reserve.
We will present the evaluation reports, provide an updated schedule, and have more detail with the cash flow.
So you're looking, are you looking for, I know that the total payment is $3.5 million, but you're already locked into the $1 million. So what you're looking for is to include in the fiscal year 1920 budget an additional payment of effectively $2.5 million to be budgeted for fiscal year 1920 to be paid against the PERS UAL.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. And at this point, where you're asking us to have that incorporated in the budget, but the budget's not going to be on our desk. It doesn't sound like till potentially August, so the payment may not happen. Will you come back and ask us for actual permission to make that $2.5 million additional discretionary payment, or is this action actually potentially approving that payment as well?
We can go by minute action. Regardless of the budget preparation, and if it gets postponed to August, we will make the minimum 30-year, the $1 million payment.
Right.
If you would like to have me include that in the budget and come back, waiting a month or two to make that additional payment, I don't think is problematic.
I'd rather just get this and pay it. I mean, look at the cost savings. And at least in the first couple of years anyway, the impact on the total emergency reserve fund is not that great.
Right.
And the cost savings just compounds and saves this district, that's $11 million. That's a big number. That we'd be losing if we just made our similar minimum payment.
Right. No, I understand, assuming we is only returning with that money sitting.
Yeah.
If we're 2.5% and you're paying, you're paying interest at 7%. So
If the board wishes to give action to pay all of it now, we can incorporate it into the budgets when they get approved.
All of it now, meaning all of the
The 3.5.
The sum of 3.5.
The sum together.
The sum together.
I mean, I would be okay with that. I would be okay with, when we look at the budget, considering
Maybe the budget.
Considering doing more.
Okay.
I mean, so, and that comment.
Is that a board action?
It's a comment at the moment. But it's based on, I want to go back to, it was the first table that you showed it up there, LaRue.
Sure.
Which I think showed a $29 million unrestricted cash balance. So that money, the potential use, one potential use of that money is to pay down our UAL. Another potential use is for capital projects of any type.
Replacement, repair, upgrade.
Which would most likely be replacement, repair here at the plant. And then the third is, reserve funds. So that's well in excess of the reserve targets we've established. My understanding is we don't currently have a program towards capital replacement, but this Carollo study we're going through may result in us programming a whole lot more capital in the not too distant future for replacement, for plant replacement type infrastructure.
Potentially.
So, that, in my mind, that's where the conversation is. Our emergency reserve is covered. And is how aggressive are we going to get with the capital replacement, which is what Lane brought up. And the reason I say I could consider at the budget time getting even more aggressive is even the 5-year plan, there's still $3 million worth of interest being paid in that 5-year plan. So if you're going to stretch it out over 5 years, unless you're going to, if the plan is to pay it off in 5 years, but you're not going to use the capital, if within that 5 years you're not
Having a huge capital replacement cost.
you're not deferring a bunch of capital replacement, then it would make sense to pay it off even more aggressively.
Yeah, agreed.
So
what's your recommendation?
I would be comfortable with giving direction to make the 2020 payment on whatever the schedule is, and then as a part of the budget discussion in August, considering whether or not to make an additional payment at that point.
Okay. Have a motion?
Could be, but I saw Dale had a question.
Well, I was just going to move this forward in saying that I'd like to move that we make the additional payment of 2.474 and be on the 5-year plan.
Okay.
So we're going to make the payment of $858,665 already made, but we're going to make an additional payment of 2.474. That puts us on the 5-year plan.
And to review it at the next
fiscal year.
Okay, it's as far as possibly paying that down even more.
Are you okay with that, Dale?
Yeah.
When we look at the budget?
Yes, whatever it takes to stay on the 5-year plan, because we're going to save $11 million at the end of the 5 years. That's a no-brainer.
I didn't know, I apologize, I didn't interpret those two to be the same.
Yeah, what I was suggesting is we could even consider being more aggressive in the 5-year plan. Not making that decision now.
Not taking it, let's make,
Looking at it as part of the budget.
so what I'm hearing is we're gonna make the decision to pay the additional 2.47 now, okay? And then at the next budget period, let's look at where we're at and make, if we wanna make additional amounts to the UAL, we will do it at that time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So is that 2.5 million? That's we're directing staff to make that payment now, so that's part of this fiscal year. Or we're gonna do it after July 1. And so
Right, after
to incorporate
July
that in the budget, it's gonna be paid after July 1. It's gonna be put in the budget for next year, and we can still,
Add to that if we wanted to.
yeah, we always have that
That's the motion that's on the board, right?
ability.
Yes, I just want to stay on the 5-year plan. If that takes, I'm making an additional payment of 2.474, let's do it and stay on the plan.
Yeah.
We still have some time. I'm setting two different positions on it. What we could do is, we will make the one payment of the minimum requirement. Come back and have the discussion during the budget approval process. And then make the determination if we want to pay the 2.5 or more. And then that way we hopefully have more data and everybody will be able to see it better. And we have time on our side. So I think that would solve the problems. Like I said, 2 months postponement on the ADP, I don't think is that substantial of a savings. There's no harm in taking the time. It sounds like everybody's in consensus of making sure that we address the UAL in an aggressive fashion for cost savings, getting everybody's comfort level to there. So we'll proceed to budget in the $1.8 million the minimum for the upcoming fiscal year into the budget. And during the time of the budget discussion, we will extend it to incorporate the additional amount of the UAL, whether that be the 2.5 million or more or less of that. Would that be acceptable?
I think you got consensus here that 2.5 is budgeted number, and for the July, after July 1st, and then we would consider at that time during that budget process even raising that up as far as discussion. So you're going to put in the 2.5 as a budget number.
It'll be the 3.5, the total.
The total, correct.
Yes.
The 8 with the 2.5.
It's, just to clarify, it's the 1,060,000 plus the 2.4 for a total.
Correct. Okay. Is it?
That's where I'm at.
Okay, so
That's where my
to
motion
stay
is.
on 5 years.
Stay on 5 years.
Okay, that's a motion.
And if we could pay it off and put larger amounts in, depending on what our balance is, then we can make that decision when the time comes.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Director Northwood seconds it. Any further discussion?
It would help me, LaRue, just to, when we're pulling these substantial sums out of, looks like Fund 6. I just can't remember what our reserve policy for Fund 6 is, what our minimum target balance in that fund is. Is it, maintaining enough to cover the next 5 years? Improvement projects, I don't know what it is, and so pulling money out of it is fine, but I want to make sure that we've got a reserve policy, that's conservative, that we would all want also, and that we're not, violating it, or if we are, we're knowledgeably doing that. We're not, so when you come back later, just, that would be helpful. And again, I'm not sure what that reserve, I know we had that reserve fund, I don't know what the reserve fund policy is, if it even exists, and whether we maybe need to adopt
Why don't we bring that
as
back?
well.
Why don't we
I think that's part of the budget process, but I'm comfortable with the motion.
Why don't we do that at the next month meeting? That's easy. Just on the reserve amount.
Well, I think it'll be part of the full budget.
We better make it part of all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Just to be clear then, I will plan and budget for the full 3.5, which includes the minimum year and the 2.5. And then that further discussion will be held in budget time to make a determination if we want to pay more.
Okay. Do we have a motion and a second?
I move.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go on to discussion on fiscal year 2019-20, agency financial budget.
Yes, historically, we've adopted budgets in June. Since we made a format change, I'd like to move them to July moving forward, but since we don't have one full cycle year of data on this one, for ease and accuracy for the board for budget preparations, I ask that we postpone the adoption of our financial budgets until August, or our August meeting. We have enough information to make projections, but that's what they will be. It would be easier on staff and myself to have that extra couple months. It is not critical. It's just something to be considered.
It just gives you a full year to get a better figure.
That's exactly it.
So the question I've got, our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30.
Yeah.
So doing, and for this year, if we need to adopt in August, I'm okay with that, but just, I guess what I'm used to is you typically get your budget adopted for the next year prior to the next year starting. So, I don't know, I think what I heard you say is that as a matter of course, we would be adopting our budget in July, and the benefit of that, instead of doing it in June, is that you've got better ability to make projections.
Yeah, we've done them in June. I've done them in June and in July. When it comes to the first year, for the first cycle, just so we can get a good full set of numbers. When you move forward to the way the budget's set up, we're actually showing a comparison of what we projected and what actual. So if we're adopting that budget in June, you are now getting June data. So you don't have that final months of expenditures and revenues. So it's not uncommon where I've seen we would adopt it in July, places that adopt it in July, because now you have the full budget picture. The month difference doesn't make that big of an impact. Overall, it's just more for reporting purposes. But historically, we have done them here in June, but it was a different format. We could maintain the June format. I have no objections to
But your
that.
accuracy is going to be much better if we do it in
July.
July or August.
Yeah. Well, July.
You've got employee negotiations and all that,
But for this one, I do request that we have one full cycle on it. But again, it's not critical. We've already started the preparation on it. Just be aware that there are some projections on it, and it's just easier for a push on it.
Yeah,
so. Are we good with it?
well, I'm good with giving you the full year. I know you've got a lot of other things on your plate, particularly in your finance and admin departments that are probably working on this. So that's fine. I would concur with Dan, and I understand that, when you're developing a budget for the next year, you end up having to do some forecasting to projected actuals, but that's pretty typical, I think. And I would even go so far as to say, to bring a preliminary budget in May for review, and then the final budget in June, as opposed to waiting till July. That seems out of order to be adopting budgets after the budget year has started. It's something we can discuss more next year as we roll around.
What is the CPA say?
I believe they have input on the budget. We're concerned about how we're allocating them.
But
Okay, are we good?
as far as the action on this one, getting that full year under, everything I'm seeing on the financial reporting is looking really good. I appreciate the efforts you guys are making, and I'm fine with waiting till August this year.
Okay, board, okay with that? Okay. Let's go on to department reports.
Good morning, Board. Mike Peak, Operations Manager. The operations report for the month of April. All plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. The operations report itself, overall, the plant performed well for the month. Laboratory staff performed necessary laboratory testings per WDR requirements and operational needs. You can see plant data here. Monthly average flow was 6.63. The monthly maximum instantaneous, 9.14, and the maximum 7-day average, 6.84. And that all our constituent levels, effluent limitation descriptions were met for the month. Is there any questions?
Any questions, board?
No, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Next up.
Short and sweet.
Morning, Board President and Director of the Board. So for maintenance, as the month of April's rolled around, along with the construction season, we're seeing an uptick in the USA Dig alerts, and I'm sure we'll continue to see that through the summer. The big project for maintenance this month has been budget prep and the Lucity project. Still doing data collection. We've completed headworks, primaries, secondaries, oxygenation basins, and are moving into the RAS structures. So as we get that data in, we're going to start the QA/QC process and then actually start uploading. Our project manager has our site, our cloud-based site developed and live, so we've started to poke around in that a little bit, and we'll continue to identify the modules that we're going to utilize and then build all that base layer data.
Okay. Anything with Richard? Okay, thank you. Okay.
So in the month of April, engineering staff worked on a number of projects, the ones that are listed, and the project planning for Hotel Avery. Any questions?
Yeah, what's happening with Avery?
I'm welcome to elaborate on any of these, by the way. Avery, we just received a 90% plan, set of plans and specs last night.
So they've gone forward.
So they're going forward with the design. We reviewed the 50% a month ago or so, and they're going forward with the 90% for our review. Their current schedule shows us bringing documents to the board by August. We'll see where they end up on schedule, because I think it's important before the board approves the project that we have things like the right-of-ways in hand and all the agreement provisions that we require for this project to occur, to have that in hand before PTSA approves it for advertising. But the consultant, Auerbach, is developing plans and specs on a quick time frame.
Okay.
We've been here before.
Yeah.
They don't have land use approval yet.
They don't.
So again, I think it's important that we check all the boxes before you finally approve the project. But staff, in the meantime, will be commenting on the technical aspects of it as we move along, so that part of it is done.
Are we spending any money on this other than board staff time?
Our design consultant is reviewing each of the submittals.
Okay, now, are we getting any kind of reimbursement on this? I don't want to see us going in the same direction we did the last go-around, where we ended up being in the hole about, what, 26 grand or something like that?
You mentioned about that.
I can address that. In our agreement, we had made them required to put a deposit down, and then we monitor that deposit and take funds away from the amount. And when it reaches a certain set point, we ask them to replenish the monies in the deposit. So far, they have not replenished the deposit, and there's still enough money to have us continue going. And there will be compliance with the funding for the agreement.
The money up front.
Slow report. Anytime you put a couple of 25s in that TRI concerns me.
Yeah, we've had our consultant review preliminary hydraulics. They look actually okay, and as the design progresses, if there are changes in the alignment, et cetera, they would relook at hydraulics.
Speaking about the TRI, if you've been in contact with Dave Hunt over at Squaw, and are ready to get on board with the June 1st kickoff?
Yeah, so we attended the pre-con meeting, And so we're set to go to support whatever the squad needs on that.
Great. All right, any questions? Hey, Bob.
Good morning, gentlemen, the board. The main IT developments this month are as follows. We worked with operations to modify one of the processes in BNR that have been a problem that's been vexing us during the springtime high flows. And so far the modifications have been successful. We've also replaced the surveillance camera on the dewatering building that provides bird's eye view of the parking lot, digesters, and west view of the chlorine building, along with the front gate. The camera has exceeded our expectations, and we're going to be replacing some of our aging and malfunctioning cameras on top of the BNR pump station, and also on the corner of AWT. And also the IT department has developed the connection permitting website portal for use by our member districts and TTSA. We have done final checks and testing with the building department, and our website is up and available for use. Any questions?
I got questions with probably, I don't know who on the BNR situation with the high head, when you're talking in here to mitigate the high head loss, is that strictly due to the volume going through the BNR?
So it's a combination of volume and certain types of growth in the cells. So we've seen this a couple of times. We saw it back in 2016-17, and then again this year when we had the higher flows coming through the plant, and we're trying to maintain those flows through BNR. It will have a higher head loss. So we make several operational changes to mitigate those head losses. One of them is by reducing the backwash time on the cells so that they're being backwashed more frequently. That adds a little bit more recycle flow, but it also keeps the backwash or the head loss down. So it's kind of a combination of flow and growth in the fixed media.
Sorry, slowing the flow down when that takes place?
Well, are we slowing the flow down as far as
in the BNR system in itself, as far as to mitigate what's taking place there?
No, we don't really have the capacity to store enough water to slow the flow down through BNR at times of the day. So at some of these higher flow rates that we have to put through BNR, we just have to make other operational changes to mitigate that high head loss.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions, Bob? Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Rochelle?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. In addition to regular agency business, we have held some workshops with our member districts after the passing of Ordinance 1/2019 with the changes to our connection fee schedule. And we have got a lot of good feedback. And as Bob mentioned, he set up a new permitting website for us to help the member districts be able to enter their permits online. And it has a way to calculate the fees within the permit to make it easier for them to do that. So we're getting a lot of positive feedback allowing that option. Also, we're continuing planning for the tax roll billing. We sent out our mailers in May and have gotten a lot of positive and a little bit of negative feedback, but I think we have answered a lot of the customers' questions as they call in so we can eliminate some of their fears. And other than that, we are moving forward with the Excel software program, and we have sent them a lot of our data so they could set up the modules and format them all for us, and we're going to start working on the next phase of that. So we should have that up in the next few months.
Good. Anybody have any questions? Thank you, Rochelle.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's go on to general manager.
One thing I wanted to add in addition to what's written there is that we are planning on starting improvements with the administrative office upfront. So we can come to the next board meeting, depending on the schedule, to be aware of that. We'll be just be a parking spot for the contractor. So we'll make sure that we're not affected their schedule too much.
Who did we finally get for that?
It's CNW Construction. CNW.
CNW?
Yeah, out of Rescue, California.
Out of Rescue.
Rescue.
Where's that?
It's, my understanding it's between like Placerville and Rancho Cordova, you know, somewhere in the foothills there, just outside of Sacramento.
Nothing.
Okay. With that, Board of Directors' comments. Director Tustin.
I just had several staff members wanted me to convey their appreciation to Rochelle and to Emily in the workshops they convened in listening to our concerns regarding the change in the connection fee, and they really appreciated the opportunity to provide input and felt they were listened to, and that was a big step for you guys to take, and they wanted to make sure you knew that they appreciated that. So
Thank you.
yeah, good job.
Director Cox.
As long as Jay's aware that we're going to be kicking off this project at Squaw for the siphon lines going under the river. And I think all our ducks are in line to move this project forward in a timely manner. And I'm looking forward to watching this because it's going to be a real state-of-the-art, unusual application. It's going to be something that it wouldn't hurt for any of the board members to take a little bit of time when this thing is actually being drilled and it's under operation to check it out, because you're not going to see it very often. It's right in our own backyard.
Okay.
All $2 million worth.
Squaw Valley's happy to pay by themselves.
Yes.
Director Wilkins. You good?
You picked up on that real good, didn't you, Lane?
Hey, it's my job, buddy. Yeah, I just want to compliment everybody here as far as the transparency that the district is now doing with the cameras and
Which aren't working.
Which aren't working at this time. So it seems, unfortunately, most of the heavy stuff we get done. Is it working?
I think it is working, yeah.
It's not working on here, but whatever. You know, we are in a period of transition as far as everything with the tax rolls and that sort of thing going forward. I just want to encourage staff to, you know, during this period of time with the compensation study that we get, you know, the employees have the proper time to get that information to it, and we respond in a timely manner. And it's all good. So with that, I'm going to close the go into closed session at this time. We're going to take a 5-minute recess, okay?